well zoo. The, the tradition zoo in is being conducted in the central zoo. This celebration is to commemorate 5 years India's independence in 2022. They is taking this forward with a massive outreach campaign to coexistence. The People's Connect. The campaign is going to be looking after it is going to be looking into 75 conservation dependent species for a period of 75 weeks, along with highlighting of 75 zoos. The celebration was flagged off by our honorable Prime Minister, Prime Minister of March 2021, and we are currently in week 4 of the celebration. So, coming without further ado, coming to today's talk, our expert speaker is Dr. Manas Manjrekar. So, a little introduction about Dr. Manas. Dr. Manas has a doctorate from Wildlife Institute of India. His research was on the behavioral patterns and food habit of reintroduced Gaur in Bandhavgarh Tiger Reserve, Madhya Pradesh. He has worked extensively in central India and is presently as director of Mangrove Foundation, which falls under the ambit of the Maharashtra Forest Department. He will talk to us today on the status and conservation of Gaur in India. Now, I would like to invite Dr. Manas to please begin his presentation.
Thank you, ma'am. Am I audible?
Yes, sir, you're audible.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I think it is full screen now, is it?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so I'll begin.
Right.
Uh, Thank you, ma'am, and a very good afternoon to everybody. So, today I'll be talking about the status and conservation of gaur in India. And as most of you might be knowing this animal, it's a reddish brown colored animal with white stockings, as we say. And if you have been to any protected areas in central India or South India, South Indian Western Ghats, then you might have seen such scenes where you find gaur grazing in the afternoon or in the early morning hours or in the late evening hours. So we'll talk a little about gaur. So gaur is basically a wild cattle belonging to the Bovidae family. And talking about the Bovidae family, the Bovidae family mainly comprises of ungulates, and so they are the even-toed ruminants, mammals such as bison, African buffalo, Asiatic wild buffalo, antelopes, sheep, and goats. And gaur specifically belongs to the genus called as bos. And so the closest relative of gaur is our domestic cattle. So in a very layman's language, we can say that gaur is a wild cow. Talking a little more about the species which are closely related to gaur. So they are the wild water buffalo or the Asiatic wild buffalo, which in India is found mainly in Kaziranga National Park and in other parts of Assam. And the other species are African buffalo, American bison, and European bison. So, talking about gaur and bison, so from a very long time, gaur has been known by the name Indian bison. Not just verbally, but even in literature, you will find that Indian bison is the name by which we refer gaur. So, as you can see here in the photograph, there is some similarity between the two animals, and that is the reason why gaur got the name Indian bison. But as I said earlier, the bison and gaur, they are two different animals. They belong to the same family, but they are two different species. So actually, calling gaur Indian bison is a erroneous name. So its name is gaur. And talking a little more about the morphology of gaur. So here you can see a photograph where a male and female are side by side, and the males in general are larger in body size. So an adult bull can weigh on an average easily around 600 kgs to 1000 kg, and an adult female will weigh somewhere around 300 to 700 kg. And by the way, Gaur is the largest species in the Bovidae family. And in this picture, if you can see, even the horn curvature. So the horn curvature of the female is has a more inward tinge, and rather the horns of the male, they have a bigger swath than that of the female. Uh, so moving on, even here you can see some of the morphological differences between the male and the female. So gores have a dorsal ridge above their shoulder and till the middle of their back. And this dorsal ridge is also very prominent in male, as you can see in the picture on the left. And so gore generally have a reddish brown color. Those populations of gaur which are found in central India in drier regions can be more brown than reddish in color. And old males, which are very adult males, they can sometimes even almost become black in color. So many times they are referred as black bulls. In this picture also you will be able to see that there is a flap of skin like hanging below the throat of the adult male gaur. So it's called as the dewlap. So the dewlap is very prominent in males and not as much in females. And you can see a calf also here, a gaur calf. So when a gaur calf is born, for the first 45 to 60 days, it is light brown in color, and then it color starts getting darker. So, talking about the distribution of Gaur in the world, as you can see from this map, Gaur, or rather the distribution of Gaur, is basically limited to South and Southeast Asian countries. So, apart from India, Gaur is found in Nepal, uh, Bhutan, Myanmar, Thailand, parts of Malaysia, Vietnam, Cambodia, and Laos. So, as you can see, that Gaur is basically restricted to the South and Southeast Asian regions. And talking about the Gaur distribution in India specifically, so you can see that Gaur is basically distributed in three distinct regions in India. So, the first region is the Western Ghats, and then we have the Central Indian region, and we have the Northeast region. Apart from this, gaur is also found in Orissa, Bihar, parts of West Bengal. So these are the three main regions where gaur is found. So since gaur is distributed such widely in India, naturally gaur is found in varied habitats. So gaur can be found, or rather gaur is found in evergreen forests, moist deciduous forests, dry deciduous forests, shola forests, thorn forests, and bamboo forests. And among these habitats, the moist deciduous forest and dry deciduous forests are the habitats which are much preferred by the gaur, or rather the bigger populations of gaur in India today are found in these two habitats. So, talking about the group dynamics of gaur, gaur is a group living animal, and a typical group consists of a few adult cows, some calves and his yearlings. There will be a few subadult animals, both male and female, and there also might be one or two adult bulls, but not necessarily that a group will have bulls. So, adult bulls, as in other large herbivores, in Gaur also, adult bulls roam solitary many a times, and they may join different groups for a short period of time, during which they may mate with females, and then they can move out of the group, again become solitary, or maybe join another groups. And many a times, Gaur bulls have also been known to form bachelor herds, that is, all male groups. So, and talking about groups in Gaur, a group is generally almost always it's led by a adult female. So, adult female generally leads a group, and many times it has been also observed that if a group has a adult bull, then the adult bull will be the last in the file, or rather it will bring up the rear. So similar observations have been made for African buffaloes also. So maybe this is a protective behavior, but we are not sure about that. So talking about reproduction in Gaur, uh, a Gaur female, after it becomes pregnant, it gives birth to a single calf generally, and the gestation period is 275 days, so it's almost 9 months. And whenever a Gaur female is about to give birth, the Gaur female will separate from the group, and it will give birth, and then it will join the group with its calf maybe after 3 4 days. So it is generally believed that the Gaur female separates from the group so that when the calf is born, there can be that strong bonding. The bonding can develop between the mother and the calf. So this is the reason why it separates from the group, and after 4 5 days, it can join the group again. So, talking about the major activities of Gaur throughout the day, throughout the year. So, as you all know, that Gaur is a large herbivore, so it needs to feed a lot. So, of course, feeding is the major activity of Gaur, and the other major activities are then moving from one place to another and resting. So, this data which I am showing you is from Bandhavgarh, where I made some observations on Gaur. And talking about the major activity patterns, so here you can see the blue line, it depicts the feeding activity. And the feeding activity for Gaur peaks during the early morning season, or rather the early morning time frame, and again during the late afternoon and evening time frame. So these are the two time frames in the day when the feeding activity is at its highest. And during the midday hours, when the heat stress is very much, the resting activity is at its peak. So it's general behavior similar to all the other large herbivores. And talking about food habits of Gaur. So Gaur is, in general, Gaur is a generalist feeder or a mixed feeder. It feeds on a lot of food plants throughout its habitat. But a Gaur is mainly a grazer, or it prefers to graze. So it mainly prefers to eat grasses and bamboo leaves. But it can eat if mainly in the dry season, the summer season, if grasses and bamboo leaves are in short supply, then it can easily switch over to other diet comprising of leaves of shrubs and trees, which we call as browsing. So again, if you see this data, like this is annual feeding time spent by Gaur. So throughout the year, you can see that the highest feeding time spent by Gaur is for bamboo leaves and grasses. So like this data is from Bandhavgarh, but then similar observations have been reported for Gaur throughout the range in India. And like here, this figure shows that the blue bar is for grazing and the red one is for browsing. So like grazing was very high in all the seasons, but in summer, as you can see, that browsing goes a little up. So because of the mm, short or limited supply of grasses and bamboo leaves, a Gaur can easily switch to other diet of leaves of shrubs and trees like that. So coming to dominance and subordination interactions. So Gaur, as I said before, that it's a group living animal. So there are a lot of dominance and subordination interactions because there is a hierarchy in a Gaur group. So these dominance subordination interactions help the Gaur individuals to establish their hierarchy. So like on the photograph on the upper right, you can see that two individuals are engaged in a head-to-head fight, and in the right hand side lower corner, you can see that one Gaur is moving towards another Gaur a little threateningly. So the main dominant subordination interactions in Gaur are chasing. So like animals chase one another, or like they lower their horns and threateningly move towards one another. They have head-to-head fights, and they also headbutting is there. So like they hit one another with their horns. So all these interactions are basically to assert their dominance, and rarely these interactions can be serious, because so no major injury is generally involved in these fights. But sometimes fights between two males, adult males or adult bulls, can get serious, and which can lead to severe or serious injuries. So, talking about natural predators for Gaur, so the major natural predator for Gaur throughout the Indian landscape is tiger. So, tigers generally prey on subadult Gaur and calves and yearlings, but there have been many instances where adult tigers have easily, or rather killed, even Gaur bulls, adult bulls. So here you can see a tiger has made a kill of a sub-adult Gaur. So, but Gaur, being a huge-sized herbivore, it's not a easy prey for tiger. So many a times Gaur can very easily stand their ground against tigers. And there have been many instances, or there are many instances where Gaur females, adult females, and adult bulls, they chase away tigers. So, like, I have one video clip. I don't know if the audio is going to play, but here you can see a Gaur female, adult cow. It is making threatening vocalizations towards a tiger to scare away a tiger. So, like, I'm not sure whether the audio was audible, but so here you can see that the Gaur cow is in the act of making its threatening vocalization towards the tiger, and like you can see the spray is coming out of its mouth. So, Gaur, as I said, can easily stand their ground against tigers. And apart from tigers, there are also incidences when leopards have been able to kill small Gaur calves or yearlings. But then leopard is not a major threat to Gaur. The only major predator for Gaur is the tiger. So, talking about threats to Gaur populations in India, so the major threats are habitat degradation, habitat fragmentation. So, in many places, the forests are getting degraded or fragmented because of other things creeping up near the jungles and forests. So that is leading to so that is a major threat for Gaur. And also the other serious threat for Gaur is diseases such as foot and mouth disease, rinderpest, anthrax. So all these diseases are very common in domestic cattle. So like if habitat fragmentation is taking place, then Gaur come more in contact with human landscapes, and in human landscapes there are always domestic cattle. So these diseases can get easily transmitted from domestic cattle to Gaur. So like for a few years now, like instances like this have become very common in some of the South Indian states. So like Gaur frequently come out to the states for grazing, and this leads to a lot of Gaur and human interaction. Sometimes there are Gaur human conflicts also. So, and as I said, always there is a threat of cattle diseases getting transmitted to Gaur populations. And even such instances where Gaur are moving into some of the hill stations in South India, where they have got very used to human beings. So they are not at all alarmed. So even these things, are, this photograph is probably from Kodaikanal. So this is starting to get common. But again, these interactions are not healthy interactions. Like, it's a serious thing. Always there is a chance of gore human conflict and other threats like diseases. And recently, a month back, I guess, this incident happened in Pune also. A Gaur subadult male got into the Pune city and it created a lot of havoc. So finally, the forest department was successful in capturing the Gaur. But unfortunately, because of the stress and the exhaustion, the Gaur individual unfortunately died. So the forest department is doing its best to control such situations, but then such situations are now creeping up, happening. And talking about Gaur conservation in India, so about the conservation status of Gaur in the IUCN Red List, Gaur is it is listed as a vulnerable species, and under the Indian Wildlife Protection Act, it's a Schedule 1 species, so it has been accorded the highest level of protection. And in CITES also it features in Appendix 1. So now the important landscapes for Gaur populations in India. So one of the most important landscape for Gaur in India is in South India, which is the Wayanad, Nagarhole, Madumalai, Bandipur complex in Western Ghats. So there are a number of protected areas in this landscape, and it's a huge chunk of forest land, contiguous forests. So um, uh, the one of the highest or biggest core population resides in this landscape. Apart from Western Ghats in South India, we have Central Indian landscape, and in Central India, the Satpura Melghat landscape and the Achanakmar Kanha Pench landscape. They're also very important for Gaur. Big Gaur populations are found in this landscape. Having said this, of course, the other Gaur populations in Eastern India and Northeast India are also very important, and they also need to be conserved for posterity. But there is an understanding that a huge chunk of the Gaur population in India, maybe 70 to 75%, is found in Western Ghats and Central India combined. So, talking about a very specific conservation initiative for Gaur. So, in Madhya Pradesh, in the Bandhavgarh Tiger Reserve, a reintroduction project for Gaur was undertaken. So, many of you might have heard about Bandhavgarh Tiger Reserve. It is very, very famous for its tigers. So, Bandhavgarh, till 1998, it used to have a small Gaur population, and maximum the population was around 40-45 individuals max. So this population went extinct by 1998. The exact reason for this extinction is not known, but it is said that the population used to migrate out of the national park to some other adjoining forest areas, and it was not able to come back because of some mishap, or there was some disease in the area, something like that. But what this incident showed us that small Gaur populations, unless they are protected, they are prone to extinction. So it's a major concern. So even after the extinction, Bandhavgarh forest remained a very good habitat for Gaur. So the Madhya Pradesh Forest Department uh, prepared a plan for reintroduction of Gaur to Bandhavgarh from Kanha Tiger Reserve. So Kanha Tiger Reserve is again a very famous national park, which is famous for its tiger and hard ground Barasinga. So this Kanha Tiger Reserve also has a very, very good Gaur population, and the habitat in Kanha is very much similar to that of Bandhavgarh. So the Wildlife Institute of India also collaborated in this project, and special expertise was sought from a South African game management company called as And Beyond. So this expertise from South African experts was needed because in India there was very limited or not much experience when it comes to relocation and translocation of large herbivores. Whereas in South Africa, the relocation, translocation activities of rhinos, of wild buffalo are quite common. Hence, their expertise was sought, and this operation was carried out in the year 2011 and 2012, and overall, 50 Gaur individuals were translocated from Kanha and reintroduced into Bandhavgarh. Of these, 27 were fitted with radio collars and for monitoring, intensive monitoring purposes. So these individuals were transported from Kanha to Bandhavgarh over a distance of 200 kilometers, and when they were brought to Bandhavgarh, they were released into enclosure, a 50-hectare enclosure. So this type of a release is called the soft release, so that we give the animals time to acclimatize to their new surroundings. And after like a couple of months, this enclosure was opened and the Gaur were allowed to roam freely in the Bandhavgarh National Park. So here are some pictures from the reintroduction program. So like this is from Kanha. So the authorities are selecting a suitable animal from a huge Gaur herd. And here you can see a immobilized animal. A sedated animal is being brought on a stretcher from the site of its capture to a small truck. So I have to say this, that throughout the entire operation, the staff of Kanha Tiger Reserve and Bandhavgarh Tiger Reserve played a very, very important role in this successful translocation program. And here you can see an immobilized animal is being loaded onto a small truck. And so what happened is that Gaur were shifted from Kanha to Bandhavgarh in groups of 5 or maximum 6 animals. So the journey was a long one, 200 kilometers. So these Gaur had a tendency of hitting one another during the journey. So since to avoid external injuries, the horns of the Gaur were clipped so that injuries could be minimized. And you can see experts from Wildlife Institute of India, they are collaring the Gaur individuals. So this truck was specifically fabricated for the said translocation, and this truck had two compartments. So like the animals could be separated into 2 3 animals in one compartment and remaining in another compartment. And whenever there was a adult bull being translocated, so it was kept alone in one compartment, because these bulls had a tendency of unnecessarily hitting the other individuals. So a bull used to be alone in one compartment and the other animals used to be in the other compartment. So here you can see a immobilized animal is being loaded onto the truck. Once it was loaded, then it was revived. And so this is a offloading ramp at the Bandhavgarh Tiger Reserve. So the truck used to line up here and the animal used to get outside in this enclosure. So here you can see a relocated Gaur herd in the enclosure. So this was a very big enclosure, 50-hectare enclosure. It had ample forage, water, salt licks, artificial salt licks for the Gaur individuals. And after about 2 months, it was opened and the Gaur were allowed to go out on their own and venture into the park area. So here you can see a radio collared Gaur. It's a female. Uh, And like this is a map of Bandhavgarh Tiger Reserve. So like earlier the Gaur had a very huge home range. Like they used to roam a area of about 150 and 200 square kilometers. But then slowly they settled down. And like this is from 2015. So they segregated into 4 groups, mainly near grasslands. Now have heard that the individuals are like there are 6 groups now in Bandhavgarh. So, like presently, the Gaur population in Bandhavgarh is about 140 plus individuals. So, this has been a very successful program. And similar programs may be undertaken by the authorities in India to ensure that Gaur population flourishes and survives. So, I think with this, I'll end my talk. Thank you very much for this opportunity. Thank you. Yeah, that's it.
Yeah. Thank you, Dr. Manas, for the very enriching on the conservation of Gaur and your work on in Bandhavgarh regarding the Gaur. So we do have a few questions. We will take them up towards the end of the session. And now moving on to the next speaker, which is for the Know Your Zoo component of the talk, I would like to invite Mr. Paresh Pora, who is going to be talking about the Bondla Zoo and the conservation breeding program that is happening at the Bondla Zoo on Gaur. So a little introduction of Dr. Paresh, of Mr. Paresh. He is a zoologist by training and has over 2 decades of experience in wildlife conservation and management. He has won various accolades throughout his career and has authored a few publications as well. He currently works with the Forest Department as a range forest officer in addition to his role as a zoo manager for the Bondla Zoo, Goa. Over to you, Mr. Paresh.
Good evening. Am I audible? Am I
Yes, sir.
audible, ma'am?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, good evening to all. Well, thank you, CZA, for giving a chance to our Zoom for in this illustrious program of Azadi Ka Amrit Mahotsav celebration and selecting our state animal as a species for Bondla. So I'll be talking. It's a very small presentation on Gaur conservation building in Bondla Zoo. We have been into breeding of gods in Bondla Zoo since 1980. Okay, and the zoo was established somewhere in 69 and uh, started as an orphanage, wherein some orphan animal, wild animals which were encountered around settlement areas or plantations were housed in this place. And this place was with animal husbandry before. Animal husbandry department were trying buffalo breeding and mountain goat breeding in this area. So the animals were housed there because it had a very good forest. It had very good forest around, and the location was very beautiful. The forest was managed by the forest department. So we started with the orphanage there, which slowly changed into a mini zoo and then into a small zoo. So we are a small zoo category right now, and we have been successful in breeding gores in captivity. So just share my slides. It's shared. So we are talking about this animal. Dr. Manjrekar has already spoken in detail about this animal. Uh, the color, the structure, and the span of horns, the behavior also, the feeding habits are slightly different in Western Ghats compared to Central India and other parts of India, as far as Gaur is concerned. And we, when we have, when we started formulating diet for this animal in the zoo, our keepers who are basically from that area who are sharing this habitat with this animal, they knew about this animal. So we got a lot of inputs from these our keepers. Accordingly, we kept on getting some variations to the diet, seasonal variations, so that we have a healthy animals in the zoo. About the history of the zoo, it started, as I said earlier, Bondla Zoo started in 1969. First in the form of orphanage or a rescue center where it rescued animals from different parts of Goa were temporarily housed before release, and some animals which were not fit to be released, like they were kept there permanently. As I said earlier, zoo was categorized as mini zoo and later on upgraded as a small zoo. This was somewhere in 1996. So, and now we have a collection of animals there, mainly Western Ghats species. We had some exotics like hippo and spectacle came in reptiles. So we have just a spectacle came in left now in the collection. Otherwise, we have mostly Western Ghats species. The first Gaur enclosure was officially constructed and designed and constructed in Bondla Zoo in 1980. Okay, and one male calf which was rescued was exhibited in Bondla Zoo and was named as Rajendra. If we see the stud book details, we refer him as Rajendra Senior. And subsequently, another female Gaur was rescued. Young, she was just something around 10 months old. She strayed into a farm. Then Chief Minister of Goa, Shri Pratap Singh Rane, suggested that it should be shifted to the zoo, and she was named as Rajni. And that's how, with these two animals, we started with the breeding program. The Gaur was chosen as state animal of Goa by the Chief Minister during one of the state wildlife advisory board meeting, and it was declared as state animal of Goa. It was proposed by then Member Secretary of WWF Goa India, Jagdish Wag, that Gaur should be declared as state animal. After breeding, we had a lot of surplus animal with us. And that's how we got into exchange program with other zoos, with approvals from Central Zoo Authority. We got into exchange program with Indira Gandhi Zoological Park, Visakhapatnam. A pair of Gaur was exchanged for a pair of tigers, and then again with Nehru Zoological Park, Hyderabad, we exchanged a pair of Gaur for
Sir, we cannot hear you.
This slide, this is the main problem what we face in the zoo with the animals. It is there with most of the zoos that when you have two males or three males can you hear me now? Can you hear me? Am I audible?
Yes, 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 sir. Yes, sir.
Yeah. Yeah. So when we do breeding, conservation breeding in a zoo, this problem crops up of territorial fights. As we say here in this picture, you can see alpha male trying to do a lateral display of young bull. They're trying to claim over the area. That is something which is difficult to manage with such a big herbivores unless you have a huge area and separate crawls and for the two males. So this is one of the problems what we have faced, and but we are managing with the animal by alternate uh, releasing them to paddock and keeping them in the feeding chambers. We have a good sizable herd size there. And if you see the topography, we have a lot of rocky outcrops there, which is like we have maintained it as natural as possible. And there is a lot of trees as a part of enrichment we have planted inside the reserve. As far as dietary needs of Gaur is concerned, uh, this is something what I have already discussed, part is discussed. We give 15 kg of green fodder. Green fodder is mainly which is cultivated in our fodder nursery. Uh, and we also procure maize, green maize, which is given. This is 15 kg per animal per day. And then we also give high protein mash, which is procured from factory run by a Goa dairy. They, they manufacture this for us, for the zoo. We give 5 kg of that. Apart from this, animal gets foliage and fruits. Like we give seasonal fruits, that includes jackfruit, cashew, artichoke, labucha, whatever is available as per the season. That is just to get some change in their diet. Now, as far as foliage is concerned, this is something which we have learned from the local population there, and of course, some of our forest guard who are knowledgeable and had a good observation. So we have included tender foliage of certain plants. Some of the plants I've listed down here: Bahonia lacinosa, Athocarbus heterophylla, Brevia timifolia, Caryota grains, Manifera indica, Terminalia tomentosa, Swabilanthus, and Athocarbus labucha. So this we give along with the branches. That is something which it's sort of it keeps them occupied. When we give foliage with branches, and they just relish in the bark of certain tree species. So these are the tree species we have listed, and we could procure them easily. So here in this picture, you can see they are fed separately with a lot of foliage. You can see the body score of the animals there. Upkeep and maintenance of this herds in captivity is not is very difficult unless you have a dedicated staff. So we had a very good dedicated staff. We still have some of the persons who are trained under Lakshman. He was a forest guard who had a rapport with most of these animals, and it was wonderful, like to know he knew the behavior of each animal, and he could tell like the lineage and everything, all the details of this animals. And animals tolerated it inside, so they responded very well for treatment or for deworming, all those things. So we require a dedicated team of staff. Only then it is possible to achieve the success of conservation. That was the last slide I have that I think stressing that we need to get more Western Ghats species by exchanging our plot. Thanks a lot. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Paresh, for the talk on Gaur and Bondla Zoo. Goa. Open. So I would like to first take up questions on these documents from my side there.
Yes, yes. Yes, I'm here.
Yeah, all right. So the first audience is right. So apart from tiger, what are the natural predators of Gaur and white?
So, as I said, that leopards have been known to predate on Gaur, like the Gaur calves or the Gaur yearlings, like small young Gaurs. So, leopards can kill them. But as such, apart from tiger, like leopards do kill sometimes small Gaurs, but otherwise there is no other predator. Like tiger happens to be the major predator of Gaur. Yeah, I hope that answered the question. Hello. Uh, yeah. Hello.
All right, sir. Our second question is, how important are contiguous forests for the survival of? Am I audible? Can you hear me?
Yeah, yeah, I can hear you.
Fine. So the second question is, how important are contiguous forests for survival of Gaur? And yeah, tell me about that. That's the first question.
Yeah. No, so contiguous forests are very important because Gaur being a very large herbivore, it requires huge area to move around. So as I showed in my presentation that today the largest chunk of Gaur population is found in the Wayanad Madumalai Bandipur complex. So this is a very, or rather the largest chunk of contiguous forest. And so there is no surprise that this largest chunk of forest inhabits the largest population of Gaur in India. So that's why Gaur being a large herbivore, it needs space to move around, and that's why contiguous forests are very important for the survival of Gaur.
Okay. So we have another question. It says that cutting of the horn tips was done for safe transportation. Since this was needed only temporarily, would something like taping foam or bubble wrap to the horns have worked?
Mm, like uh, I don't know because that was decided by the experts that that was the best course of action. So like we never tried any other options, I guess. So like that's what I can say about that. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Then the next question is, how long was this radio when you have radio collar course? How long was this radio collar being carried out for, and what were your key insights from this exercise that was done?
Yeah, so like the radio collaring was done in 2011 and 12, and since then the gores are being monitored, and even now researchers from Wildlife Institute of India are monitoring them. So even additional radio collars have been put on various animals, and mainly during that project we studied their ranging pattern, how they used to move around in the national park, how they used to use various habitats, what were their behavioral patterns, and what were their food habits. So like as I said that when these gores were brought to Bandhavgarh, they in the first 2 3 months they ranged in a very huge area like 200 square kilometer, 150 square kilometer. But then slowly, like by the end of the year, they settled down to an area of hardly 20 30 square kilometer, like their main area. So and these all were areas were located near grassland. So like during that time, like there were three villages which were relocated outside the national park. So these relocated sites transformed into nice grasslands, and the gaur used to be found always in these grasslands. And we also observed that bamboo forests and mixed forests and grasslands, like these three habitats were used majorly by gaur, and then the other forests were used in sparing quantities, but like these three habitats were very important for gaur. So like to maintain a good and healthy population of gaur in Bandhavgarh, we need to maintain good grasslands and bamboo forests. Yeah.
All right. Okay, so in line with your radio, that what is the average home ranges can be done local stations?
Sorry, I didn't get that.
What is the average home
uh,
range size for Gaur, and what measures can be done in
uh-huh,
local extinction like that was seen in Bandhavgarh? So, what is the average home range
uh-huh.
size, and what measures do you suggest can be used for preventing local.
Yeah. So like during my phase of the study, which lasted from 2012 to 2015, like the average home range for an adult male was around 200 square kilometer. That for a adult female was around 180 square kilometer, and that for sub-adult male and females were near 150 square kilometers. But then all these home ranges are on the higher side because all these animals were reintroduced animals, so they had a tendency to move around a lot. But as I said that after a year or so their home ranges did shrink, and maybe then I'm not sure about the figure, but then the home ranges may have been 30-40 square kilometers, something like that. And as I said, uh, like we in India, we do have a lot of small pockets of gaur population. So, like they need to be monitored very properly because small populations are at a risk of local extinction. And in some places, the authorities may try to again reintroduce animals to enhance the population. So, like these measures have to be taken site specific. So like there is not a generalistic solution for all these uh, problems. Yeah.
All right. So that thank you, Dr. Manas. Those were the questions for you. Now we just take questions for Mr. Paresh. Mr. Paresh, are you there?
Yes.
So, sir, your first question is, are you confident that the number of individuals of God in your zoo will increase? And would you be able to would you be able to reintroduce them in forest areas in Goa? And if yes, what are the locations that you would suggest their reintroduction in?
As far as reintroduction is concerned, we have not actually worked on the reintroduction. There was only one individual which was reintroduced somewhere in 2004, female girl, and that was the only female we have reintroduced so far. But for reintroducing, we'll have to have a proper setup to acclimatize them to the condition, because in around Bondla also around the zoo we have sizable population of gaur, uh, and they can be seen moving in the periphery of the zoo when there's female on heat in our enclosure. So outside zoo we have a natural population, and again in Mollem there are animals with quite a big herd size, say around 14 to 15 in a herd. Yeah, and as Dr. Manas has said, the main predator for gaur is tiger. Uh, we have only movement of tiger in certain areas, not the entire areas. Especially in Bondla, we don't have a predator as such for the gaur outside zoo.
All right. Okay, sir. And the next question for you is, what are the individual
Yeah, what we have done,
carried out?
we, we have inside zoo, uh, we have been putting dead logs and stuff for the animals to, you know, rub their horns, especially when they are in the breeding time. They require all these snags post to scrub on a dead logs and all. So that is one. Secondly, we have planted trees because they also love uh, debark, trees, and that is why a lot of naturally occurring trees in the enclosure were uh, destroyed by the animals themselves. So, but we planted some trees like Caryota urens, which can withstand uh, this activity of gaur, and in certain areas we have put big rocks are there around that area. That is one part, and we have been desilting the moat, and we are using the silt, uh, to make a place for them to rest on. The they prefer that. So there are certain areas in the outdoor enclosure we have done this.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Paresh. That those were the questions that were there for you. And with this, we conclude today's session on the Know Your Species, Know Your Zoo talk. I would like to thank Dr. Manas and Mr. Paresh for taking time out from their schedule to come join us on for today's talk. And further, I would like to inform the audience that the Central Zoo authorities are undertaking these webinars every Wednesday from 4 to 5 p.m. Our week 5 celebration is on the Malabar Grey Hornbill and on the State Museum and Zoo, Kerala. So please do join in next week on Wednesday at 4 p.m. Thank you so much.